During our family dinner, my daughter-in-law came up to me and whispered, "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, you bitter old hag." I laughed out loud and said, "Don't worry, dear." Weeks later, I gave her a surprise that changed everything. I will tell you what really happened. But first, let me thank you for watching Grandma's narrative. Your love and support always warm my heart. If you enjoy my stories, please click that subscribe button. Tell me which city you're watching from in the comments below. I love hearing from all of you wonderful people. Today, I want to give a special shout out to Maria from California. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you about the most shocking dinner of my entire life. A dinner that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in the same small town my whole life, watching it grow and change around me. My husband William passed away 5 years ago after we shared 48 beautiful years together. We raised 3 children in our old Victorian house on Maple Street. The house has seen so much joy, so much laughter, and unfortunately so much heartbreak too. My youngest son David is 32 years old. He's always been my gentle boy, the one who brought me flowers from the neighbor's garden when he was just 4 years old. David works as a librarian at our town's main library. He loves books more than anything in the world. Every weekend, he would come visit me with a new story to share about the people he helped find the perfect book. 2 years ago, David married a woman named Jessica. She's 28 years old with beautiful blonde hair and green eyes that sparkle when she smiles. When David first brought her home to meet me, I was so happy. My boy had found someone who seemed to care about him deeply. Jessica would hold his hand during dinner and laugh at all his stories about library adventures. But as time went by, I started noticing little things that made me feel uncomfortable. Jessica would roll her eyes when David talked about his work. She would check her phone constantly during our family conversations. Sometimes I caught her looking around our house like she was judging everything she saw. The old furniture, the family photos, the hand-knitted blankets I had made over the years. Jessica worked at a fancy marketing company in the city, about an hour drive from our small town. She made much more money than David, and she never let anyone forget it. She would talk about her expensive clothes, her new car, and the fancy restaurants she visited with her work friends. David would just smile and nod, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. Last month, I decided to host a special family dinner. It was the anniversary of William's passing, and I wanted all my children and their families to come together. We could share memories and support each other through this difficult time. I spent 3 days preparing all of William's favorite foods. Roast beef with gravy, garlic mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and his beloved apple pie with cinnamon ice cream. The dining room looked beautiful. I used my finest china, the set that William gave me for our 10th wedding anniversary. Fresh flowers from my garden decorated the table. Candles created a warm, loving atmosphere. Everything was perfect for remembering the man we all missed so much. My oldest son Michael came with his wife Susan and their twin boys. My daughter Patricia brought her husband and teenage daughter. And of course, David arrived with Jessica. She wore a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The fabric looked expensive, and her jewelry caught the light every time she moved. During dinner, we shared wonderful stories about William. How he used to read bedtime stories in funny voices. How he would dance with me in the kitchen while dinner was cooking. How he taught all the grandchildren to ride bicycles in the backyard. The room was filled with love and beautiful memories. But Jessica sat quietly through most of the conversation. She barely touched her food and kept looking at her watch like she wanted to be somewhere else. When Patricia shared a funny story about how William accidentally locked himself in the bathroom on Christmas morning, everyone laughed except Jessica. She just stared at her plate with a strange expression. David kept trying to include her in the conversation. "Jessica, remember when I told you about Dad's famous pancake breakfasts?" he would say. But she would just nod politely and go back to picking at her food. I could see my poor son's disappointment every time she ignored his attempts to make her feel part of the family. After we finished eating, I started clearing the dishes. Susan and Patricia jumped up to help me like they always do. We worked together like a team, washing and drying and putting everything away. It's one of my favorite parts of family dinners, when all the women gather in the kitchen and talk about everything and nothing. But Jessica didn't help. She stayed at the table, scrolling through her phone while the men talked about sports and work. I thought maybe she was just tired from the drive or stressed about work. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, like I always do with family. While I was putting away the last of the clean dishes, Jessica suddenly appeared in the kitchen doorway. The other women had gone back to join their families in the living room, so Jessica and I were alone. She walked over to where I stood by the sink, her high heels clicking on the old linoleum floor. "Eleanor," she said in a voice I had never heard from her before. It was cold and hard, completely different from her usual polite tone. "I need to tell you something important." My hands stopped moving. Something in her voice made my heart start beating faster. I turned to face her, and the look in her green eyes made me feel afraid. There was something cruel there, something mean that I had never seen before. Jessica stepped closer to me, so close that I could smell her expensive perfume. She leaned toward my ear like she was going to share a secret. But what she whispered made my blood turn to ice in my veins. "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and knocked all the air from my lungs. My hands started shaking so badly that I had to grip the edge of the sink to keep from falling down. "What did you say?" I whispered, hoping I had heard her wrong, hoping this was some kind of terrible mistake or cruel joke. Jessica smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed causing pain. "You heard me correctly, Eleanor. I'm going to have William's baby. Your precious husband wasn't as faithful as you thought he was." I stared at her in complete shock. My William had been dead for 5 years. How could she possibly be pregnant with his baby? It was impossible. It made no sense at all. "That's impossible," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "William died 5 years ago. You didn't even know him when he was alive." Jessica's cruel smile got even wider. "Oh, but I did know him, Eleanor. I knew him very well. We had a very special relationship before he died. He used to meet me at a little cafe downtown every Wednesday afternoon. He would tell me all about his unhappy marriage and how you didn't understand him anymore." My heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. The room started spinning around me. My beloved William, the man I had loved and trusted for almost 50 years, having a secret relationship, meeting another woman behind my back. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't be true. "You're lying," I said, but my voice sounded weak and uncertain even to my own ears. Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out what looked like an old photograph. She held it up so I could see it clearly. It showed a man who looked like William sitting in a cafe with a much younger woman. The woman had blonde hair and green eyes. It looked like Jessica but younger. "This was taken 3 months before he died," Jessica said, her voice full of fake sadness. "Poor William was so lonely, Eleanor. He told me that you had grown cold and distant, that you didn't love him the way you used to. He found comfort with me." Tears started falling down my cheeks. I couldn't stop them. The photograph looked real. The man really did look like my William, but something deep inside me refused to believe it. My William would never betray me like this. He would never hurt our family this way. Even if what you're saying is true," I managed to say through my tears. "He's been dead for 5 years. How can you be pregnant with his baby now?" Jessica's eyes lit up with excitement, like she had been waiting for me to ask this question. "Oh, Eleanor, haven't you heard of modern science? William and I preserved our love for the future. We stored what we needed at a special clinic. I've been waiting for the right time to have his baby." The room felt like it was closing in around me. I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't think clearly. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my husband, my life was falling apart right in front of my eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why now?" Jessica put the photograph back in her purse and smoothed down her expensive dress. Because I thought you should know the truth, Eleanor. And because I want you to understand something very important. This baby is going to be William's child. Your husband's son or daughter. That makes me more connected to this family than you might have realized. Before I could respond, David's voice called out from the living room. Jessica. Mom. Where are you? We're getting ready to leave. Jessica's cruel smile disappeared instantly. She transformed back into the polite, quiet woman she pretended to be around everyone else. Coming, honey, she called back sweetly. She leaned close to me one more time and whispered, think about what I've told you, Eleanor. Think about what it means. And remember, David doesn't know anything about this yet. But he will soon. Then she walked out of the kitchen like nothing had happened, leaving me standing there with tears on my face and my heart broken into pieces. I heard them saying goodbye to everyone in the living room. David's voice so happy and loving. Thanks for dinner, Mom. It was beautiful. Dad would have loved it. If only he knew what his wife had just done to me. If only he knew the terrible secret she was carrying. After everyone left, I sat alone in my quiet house and cried harder than I had since William's funeral. The walls seemed to echo with memories of our life together. Our wedding photos smiled down at me from the mantelpiece. 48 years of marriage, and now Jessica was telling me it had all been a lie. But as the hours passed and my tears began to dry, something else started growing inside me. Not sadness, but anger. And with the anger came questions. Lots and lots of questions. If William had really been meeting Jessica secretly, why had I never noticed? I knew my husband's schedule better than anyone. Every Wednesday, he spent the afternoon working in his garden or reading in his favorite chair. He never mentioned going to any cafe downtown. And the photograph Jessica had shown me. Something about it had looked wrong, but I had been too shocked to think clearly at the time. Now, as I replayed the scene in my mind, I remembered that the man in the photo had been wearing a blue shirt. William hated blue shirts. He said they made him look pale and sick. In 48 years of marriage, I had never seen him wear a blue shirt even once. The more I thought about Jessica's story, the more impossible it seemed. William and I had talked about having more children when we were younger, but we had never considered storing anything at a clinic. We were both very traditional people who believed in letting nature take its course. And there was something else. Something that made Jessica's whole story fall apart when I really thought about it. 5 years ago, when William was still alive, Jessica would have been only 23 years old. She would have been just a young woman starting her career. Why would my husband, a man in his 60s, be interested in someone who was younger than his own children? The more questions I asked myself, the more convinced I became that Jessica was lying to me. But why? What could she possibly gain from telling me such a cruel and hurtful story? What was she really trying to accomplish? I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay in the bed I had shared with William for so many years, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what was happening to my family. By morning I had made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, no matter what it took. The next day was Sunday, and I usually spent it reading and working in my garden. But instead, I got dressed in my best clothes and drove downtown to the cafe where Jessica claimed she had met William every Wednesday. It was a small place called the Corner Cup that I had passed hundreds of times but never entered. The owner was a friendly woman about my age named Ruth. I had seen her at the grocery store and church events over the years, but we had never really talked. When I walked into her cafe, she greeted me with a warm smile. Eleanor, how wonderful to see you. I don't think you've ever been in here before. What can I get you? I ordered a cup of coffee and sat down at a table by the window. After Ruth brought my coffee, I asked her if she remembered my husband William ever coming to the cafe. Ruth's face lit up with recognition. Oh yes, William was one of my favorite customers. He came in every Wednesday afternoon for about 2 years before he passed away. Always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a slice of lemon meringue pie. He would sit right over there, she pointed to a corner table, and read his newspaper or work on crossword puzzles. My heart sank. So Jessica hadn't been completely lying. William really had been coming to this cafe every Wednesday. But then Ruth continued talking, and what she said next changed everything. He was such a sweet man, always talking about his wife and how much he loved you. He would show me pictures of your garden and tell me about the flowers you grew together. Sometimes he would buy an extra slice of pie to take home to you because he said lemon meringue was your favorite. I felt tears starting in my eyes, but this time they were tears of relief, not sadness. Did he ever meet anyone here? A young woman with blonde hair. Ruth thought for a moment, then shook her head. No, I don't think so. William always came alone and kept to himself. He was very quiet, just reading and enjoying his coffee. The only time I ever saw him talk to anyone was when he would chat with me about you and the family. I finished my coffee and thanked Ruth, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. William hadn't been meeting Jessica at this cafe. He had been coming alone, probably just enjoying a quiet hour away from home, thinking about his family and the life we had built together. But if Jessica had been lying about the cafe meetings, what else was she lying about? And how had she known that William came to the corner cup every Wednesday? There was still so much I didn't understand. That afternoon, I decided to call my nephew Marcus, who works as a private investigator in the city. Marcus is William's sister's son, and he had always been close to our family. If anyone could help me figure out what Jessica was really up to, it would be Marcus. Aunt Eleanor, Marcus said when he heard my voice. What a nice surprise. How are you doing? I told Marcus everything that had happened at the family dinner. About Jessica's terrible accusation, about the photograph she had shown me, about her claim to be pregnant with William's baby. Marcus listened quietly, and I could hear him taking notes. Aunt Eleanor, he said when I finished, I think you're right to be suspicious. This whole story sounds very strange to me. Can you describe the photograph she showed you in more detail? I told Marcus about the man in the blue shirt, about how young the woman looked, about the cafe setting. He asked me several more questions about Jessica, when she and David had met, where she worked, what I knew about her family background. I'm going to do some research, Marcus said. Give me a few days, and I'll call you back with whatever I can find. In the meantime, don't say anything to David or anyone else in the family. If Jessica is up to something, we don't want to tip her off. The next few days were torture. I tried to go about my normal routine, but I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica's cruel words. Every time the phone rang, I hoped it would be Marcus with answers. Every time I saw David's car drive past my house, I wondered if Jessica had told him her lie yet. Finally, on Thursday evening, Marcus called. Aunt Eleanor, I have some very interesting information for you. Can you meet me for lunch tomorrow at that little diner on Main Street? The next day, I arrived at the diner early and found a quiet booth in the back. When Marcus walked in, he was carrying a folder full of papers and photographs. His expression was serious, but there was also something that looked like excitement in his eyes. Aunt Eleanor, he said as he sat down across from me, Jessica has been lying to you about everything. But the truth is even more shocking than her lies. He opened the folder and pulled out several documents. First, let me show you something about that photograph she showed you. I did some research on photo editing and digital manipulation. Look at this. Marcus showed me a printed copy of what looked like the same photograph Jessica had shown me. But this copy had been enhanced and analyzed by computer software. Red lines and arrows pointed to different parts of the image. This photograph has been heavily edited, Marcus explained. The man's face has been digitally placed onto someone else's body. The woman has been added to the image completely. She wasn't in the original photo at all. Whoever created this did a pretty good job, but modern technology can detect these kinds of changes. I stared at the evidence in front of me. Jessica had shown me a fake photograph. She had deliberately created false evidence to support her cruel lie about William. But why would she go to so much trouble? There's more, Marcus continued. He pulled out another set of papers. I did a background check on Jessica. Her real name is Jessica Marie Thompson, and she has quite an interesting history. Marcus spread out several police reports and court documents. Jessica has been arrested 3 times for fraud and identity theft. She served 6 months in jail 2 years ago for scamming elderly people out of their savings. She would target lonely seniors and convince them that she was their long-lost relative or that she needed money for a medical emergency. My hands started shaking as I read through the documents. The woman my son had married was a criminal. She had been preying on innocent people and stealing their money. And now she was part of our family. But wait, I said. How did she meet David? He works at the library. She works at a marketing company in the city. How did their paths cross? Marcus smiled grimly. That's where it gets even more interesting. Jessica doesn't work at a marketing company. She's never worked at a marketing company. She's been unemployed for the past year, living off credit cards and small cons. Then how did she meet David? I talked to some people at the library, Marcus said. Apparently, Jessica started coming in regularly about 3 years ago. She would ask David for help finding books about local history, old newspapers, genealogy records. She spent months researching your family, Aunt Eleanor. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they formed made me feel sick to my stomach. She was studying us, learning about our family, our history, our weaknesses. Exactly, Marcus nodded. She knew David was lonely and looking for companionship. She knew he was kind and trusting. She studied your family for months before she ever introduced herself to him as a potential romantic partner. I thought back to when David first brought Jessica home to meet us. How she had seemed so interested in our family photos, asking questions about William, about our marriage, about our life together. I had thought she was just being polite and trying to get to know us. But she had been gathering information. But what does she want? I asked. What's her end goal? Marcus pulled out one more document from his folder. This is the most important piece of the puzzle. Jessica has been researching your financial situation very carefully. She knows about William's life insurance policy. She knows about your savings account. She knows about the value of your house and property. My heart sank as I understood what Marcus was telling me. She's after our money. I think she's planning something much more elaborate than just asking for money, Marcus said. Think about it. She tells you that she's pregnant with William's baby. If people believe that story, she would have a legal claim to William's estate. She could argue that as the mother of his child, she deserves part of his inheritance. The diner suddenly felt very hot and stuffy. I couldn't believe that someone could be so calculating, so evil. Jessica had married my son, become part of our family, all so she could steal from us. There's one more thing, Marcus said quietly. I don't think Jessica is actually pregnant at all. I had a friend who works at the hospital run a check on her medical records. She hasn't been to any doctor for pregnancy care. She hasn't had any pregnancy tests done at any clinic in the area. Then why would she claim to be pregnant? Because it makes her story more urgent and emotional. If she can convince people that she's carrying William's child, they're more likely to believe her other lies. Plus, if she's pregnant, people will feel sorry for her and want to help her financially. I sat back in the booth, overwhelmed by everything Marcus had told me. Jessica wasn't just a liar. She was a professional con artist who had spent years planning to rob my family. She had manipulated my sweet, trusting son into marrying her. She had wormed her way into our lives and our hearts, all so she could destroy us. What do we do now? I asked. Marcus closed the folder and looked at me seriously. We need to be very careful, Aunt Eleanor. Jessica is dangerous and smart. If we confront her directly, she might disappear or escalate her con. We need to gather more evidence and plan our approach carefully. But what about David? I can't let her keep lying to him and using him. I know it's hard, but we need to wait a little longer. I want to set up some surveillance and see what Jessica does next. If we can catch her in the act of trying to scam someone else, we'll have even stronger evidence to show David and the police. I agreed to Marcus's plan, even though every fiber of my being wanted to march over to David's house and tell him everything immediately. But I knew Marcus was right. We needed to be smart and careful if we wanted to protect my family and make sure Jessica couldn't hurt anyone else. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus worked with some of his investigator friends to watch Jessica. They followed her during the day and monitored her activities. What they discovered was even more shocking than we had expected. Jessica had been visiting several other elderly people in town, telling each of them a different version of her sad story. She told Mrs. Henderson from Pine Street that she was pregnant and needed money for medical bills because her husband had lost his job. She told Mr. Rodriguez from Oak Avenue that she was caring for a sick relative and needed help with rent money. Most shocking of all, Jessica had been visiting the cemetery where William was buried. She would go there with flowers and stand by his grave, crying dramatically. When other visitors asked what was wrong, she would tell them that William had been her secret lover and that she was carrying his child. She's building a network of people who will support her story, Marcus explained when he called to update me. If she can get enough people to believe that she and William had a relationship, it will be much harder for anyone to prove she's lying. I felt disgusted by the thought of Jessica using William's grave as a prop in her con game. My beloved husband couldn't defend himself against her lies. She was taking advantage of his death, using people's sympathy for a grieving widow to support her cruel deception. But Marcus had good news too. We have everything we need now, Aunt Eleanor. Photos, recordings, witnesses, financial records. We can prove that Jessica is a fraud and that she's been running multiple cons at the same time. What's our next step? I think it's time to talk to David, but we need to do it carefully. He's going to be devastated when he learns the truth about his wife. We need to be prepared to support him through this. That evening I called David and asked him to come over for dinner. Just him without Jessica. I told him I wanted to spend some one-on-one time with my son, which wasn't a lie. I did want to spend time with him, even though the reason was heartbreaking. David arrived at 6 o'clock with a big smile and a bouquet of flowers from his garden. "For the most beautiful mom in the world," he said, kissing my cheek. My heart broke a little more, knowing that I was about to destroy his happiness. We ate dinner and talked about normal things. His work at the library, the books he was reading, the plans he and Jessica were making for their future. Every time he mentioned her name, I felt a stab of pain, knowing what I was about to tell him. After dinner, as we were cleaning up the dishes together, I took a deep breath and said, "David, honey, I need to talk to you about something very important. About Jessica." David's face immediately became concerned. "Is everything okay, Mom? Did something happen?" I sat him down at the kitchen table and held his hands, just like I used to when he was a little boy and I had to tell him something difficult. "David, what I'm about to tell you is going to be very hard to hear. But I need you to listen to everything before you react, okay?" David nodded, his brown eyes full of worry and confusion. I told him everything. About Jessica's cruel claim at the family dinner. About my investigation with Marcus. About the fake photograph and the false pregnancy. About Jessica's criminal history and her pattern of targeting vulnerable people. As I talked, I watched my son's face change from confusion to disbelief to horror to heartbreak. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down his cheeks. "Mom," he whispered, "please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake." I reached across the table and squeezed his hands. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I wish it wasn't true. But we have proof of everything I've told you." Just then the doorbell rang. It was Marcus, arriving right on time with his folder of evidence. David looked through every document, every photograph, every police report. With each piece of evidence, his shoulders sagged a little more. "I can't believe I was so stupid," David finally said. "How did I not see what she really was? How did I fall for all her lies?" "You weren't stupid," I said firmly. "You were in love. Jessica is a professional con artist who has spent years perfecting her techniques. She knew exactly how to manipulate your kindness and trust." Marcus spoke up. David, you should know that you weren't her only target. We have evidence that she's been running scams on at least 6 other people in town at the same time she was married to you. David put his head in his hands. What do I do now? How do I even face her? How do I tell her I know the truth? You don't have to do this alone, I assured him. Marcus and I have a plan. But first I need to ask you something important. Has Jessica asked you for money recently? Has she mentioned anything about William's inheritance or our family's finances? David looked up with surprise. Actually, yes. Just last week she started talking about how we should move in with you to help take care of you as you get older. She said it would save money and keep the family close together. But now that I think about it, she seemed more interested in talking about the value of this house than about spending time with you. Marcus and I exchanged looks. Jessica's plan was moving into its final phase. She was getting ready to make her big move for our family's money. David, Marcus said, we think Jessica is planning to escalate her con very soon. She's been building support for her story about being pregnant with William's baby. She's probably going to make some kind of public claim and demand money or property. What can we do to stop her? We're going to turn the tables on her, I said with more confidence than I felt. We're going to give her exactly what she wants, a public confrontation about her pregnancy claim. But we're going to be ready with the truth. Marcus outlined our plan. We would organize another family dinner, but this time we would invite some additional guests, people who had witnessed Jessica's various cons around town. We would let Jessica make her pregnancy announcement in front of everyone, and then we would present our evidence. It sounds risky, David said. What if she runs away when she realizes we know the truth? She won't run, Marcus said confidently. Con artists like Jessica are arrogant. She thinks she's smarter than everyone else. When we challenge her, her pride will make her fight back instead of running away. And that's when we'll have her. The next day, David went home and acted normal around Jessica. It was one of the hardest things he had ever done, but he managed to pretend that nothing had changed. Meanwhile, Marcus and I spent the day making phone calls and setting up our trap. I called my other children and told them I wanted to have another family dinner on Sunday. I also invited Ruth from the cafe, Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Rodriguez, the elderly people Jessica had scammed, and Officer Martinez from the local police department. I told everyone it was going to be a special announcement dinner, but I didn't say what the announcement would be. On Sunday morning, I cooked all day, preparing a feast that would feed our large group of guests. But unlike the last family dinner, this time I wasn't cooking with love and joy. I was cooking with determination and righteous anger. Jessica had hurt my family for the last time. David and Jessica arrived first, and I could see the strain on my son's face as he tried to act normal around his wife. Jessica seemed excited and nervous, probably thinking that this dinner would be her chance to make her big announcement and claim her share of our family's money. As the other guests arrived, Jessica looked confused. Eleanor, who are all these people? I thought this was just going to be a family dinner. Oh, these are all friends and neighbors, I said sweetly. I thought it would be nice to have a bigger celebration. After all, you said you had some exciting news to share with everyone. Jessica's eyes lit up. This was even better than she had hoped. More witnesses to her announcement meant more people who would support her claim later. During dinner, Jessica was more animated than I had ever seen her. She kept touching her stomach and making comments about how she was eating for 2 now. She talked about baby names and nursery colors. She was really playing up her role as an expectant mother. When we finished eating, I stood up and tapped my glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, Jessica has asked me to give her an opportunity to make a very special announcement. Jessica. Jessica stood up with a radiant smile, her hand on her stomach. Thank you all for being here tonight. David and I are so excited to share our wonderful news with all of you. She paused dramatically, looking around the room at all the expectant faces. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. Everyone started clapping and offering congratulations. David managed to smile and accept the well wishes, even though I knew his heart was breaking. Jessica basked in the attention, hugging everyone and accepting their excited questions about due dates and doctor appointments. But then Jessica held up her hand for silence. There's something else I need to share with all of you. Something very important about this baby. The room grew quiet. This was the moment we had been waiting for. This baby, Jessica said, her voice full of fake emotion, is very special to the Williams family. You see, this baby's father isn't David. Gasps filled the room. David pretended to look shocked and hurt. My other children stared at Jessica in disbelief. The father of this baby, Jessica continued, is Eleanor's late husband, William. The room erupted in shocked voices and confusion. People were asking questions, looking back and forth between Jessica and me, trying to understand what they had just heard. Jessica pulled out the fake photograph and held it up for everyone to see. William and I had a very special relationship before he passed away. We were deeply in love, and we made arrangements to preserve our love for the future. This baby is the result of that love. Mrs. Henderson from Pine Street stood up, her face red with anger. That's not what you told me, young lady. You said David was the father and that you needed money for medical bills because he lost his job. Mr. Rodriguez joined in. And you told me you were caring for a sick relative. You said you needed help with rent money. Jessica's confident smile started to falter as more people began speaking up. Ruth from the cafe stood and said, I knew William Williams for years. He came to my cafe every Wednesday, and he never stopped talking about how much he loved his wife Eleanor. He would never have betrayed her with another woman. Officer Martinez, who had been quietly taking notes throughout the evening, stood up and pulled out his badge. Jessica Thompson, I think we need to have a conversation about some fraud complaints that have been filed against you. Jessica's face went white. She looked around the room desperately, realizing that her carefully planned con was falling apart. I don't know what you people are talking about. You're all confused. David, tell them. Tell them about our baby. But David stood up with tears in his eyes. There is no baby, Jessica. And there never was any relationship between you and my father. He pulled out the folder Marcus had prepared and dumped all the evidence on the table. We know about your criminal history. We know about the fake photograph. We know about all the people you've been scamming around town. Jessica stared at the evidence spread across the table, her face cycling through anger, fear, and desperation. You don't understand, she said frantically. I do love David. I do want to be part of this family. I needed the money. I owe money to some very dangerous people. So you decided to destroy our family and steal from us? I asked, standing up to face her. You decided to tell cruel lies about my dead husband. You decided to break my son's heart. Jessica started crying, but unlike her usual fake tears, these looked real. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I just needed a little money to get out of debt, and then I would have disappeared. But David was so kind to me, so loving. I started to actually care about him. You have a funny way of showing you care, my daughter Patricia said angrily. You married him under false pretenses. You've been lying to him every single day. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. We have several fraud charges to discuss. But before he could reach her, Jessica suddenly grabbed a knife from the dinner table. Not to hurt anyone, but to threaten herself. Don't come any closer, she screamed. I'll hurt myself if you try to arrest me. The room went silent. Everyone froze, afraid that Jessica might actually harm herself. David took a step toward her, his face full of concern despite everything she had done to him. Jessica, please put the knife down, he said gently. Whatever trouble you're in, hurting yourself won't solve anything. You don't understand. Jessica sobbed. I owe $50,000 to loan sharks. If I don't pay them back, they're going to kill me. I was desperate, David. I didn't know what else to do. Marcus, who had been quiet throughout the confrontation, finally spoke up. Jessica, there are legal ways to deal with debt problems. There are programs to help people in your situation. But fraud and identity theft only make things worse. It's too late for that, Jessica said, still holding the knife. I've made too many mistakes. I've hurt too many people. Maybe everyone would be better off if I just... No, I said firmly, surprising everyone including myself. I walked slowly toward Jessica, ignoring the knife in her hand. Jessica Thompson, you are not going to hurt yourself in my dining room. You are not going to add another tragedy to this family's story. I reached out my hand toward her. Give me that knife, young lady. Right now. Something in my grandmother voice must have triggered an automatic response in Jessica, because she slowly lowered the knife and placed it in my outstretched hand. Then she collapsed into a chair and sobbed like a broken child. I'm so sorry, she whispered over and over. I'm so sorry for everything. Officer Martinez gently handcuffed Jessica while she continued to cry. Ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. As they led Jessica away, she looked back at David one more time. David, I know you'll never forgive me. But please know that my feelings for you were real. You're the only good thing that ever happened to me. David didn't respond. He just stood there watching his wife being arrested, tears streaming down his face. After the police car drove away with Jessica inside, our guests slowly began to leave. Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Rodriguez both thanked us for exposing Jessica's crimes. Ruth from the cafe hugged me and said she was glad we had cleared William's name. Officer Martinez promised to keep us updated on the case. When everyone was gone, it was just our family left in the dining room. David sat at the table staring at the evidence that had destroyed his marriage. Patricia and Michael tried to comfort him, but he seemed lost in his own thoughts. Son, I said, sitting down next to him. I know this is overwhelming. But you need to know that none of this is your fault. David looked up at me with red, puffy eyes. How can you say that, Mom? I brought her into our family. I married a criminal. I was so blind that I never saw what she really was. David, Michael said firmly. Jessica fooled all of us. She spent months studying our family and learning how to manipulate us. Even Mom didn't figure out the truth until Jessica made that terrible claim about Dad. Your brother is right, Patricia added. Jessica is a professional con artist. She's probably fooled dozens of people over the years. You're not stupid for falling for her act. But David shook his head. I should have seen the signs. The way she never wanted to spend time with her own family. The way she always had excuses for why I couldn't meet her friends. The way she was always so interested in our family's finances. I took David's hands in mine, just like I had when he was a little boy with a scraped knee. David, honey, when we love someone we want to believe the best about them. That's not a character flaw. That's what makes you a good person. Jessica took advantage of your kindness, but that doesn't mean you should stop being kind. But how will I ever trust anyone again? David asked. How will I ever know if someone really cares about me or if they're just using me? Marcus, who had been quietly cleaning up the evidence from the table, spoke up. David, the fact that Jessica was able to fool you doesn't mean everyone will try to fool you. There are genuinely good people in the world who will love you for who you are, not for what you can give them. Over the next few days, the story of Jessica's arrest spread throughout our small town. People were shocked to learn that the sweet young woman who had seemed so devoted to David was actually a career criminal. Several other victims came forward with their own stories of how Jessica had scammed them. David took a week off from work at the library to process everything that had happened. He spent most of that time at my house, sitting in the garden where William used to grow his roses. We would talk for hours about trust, about love, about how to heal from betrayal. Mom, David said one afternoon as we sat among the flowers, do you think Dad would be disappointed in me for falling for Jessica's lies? I thought about William, about his gentle nature and his unconditional love for our children. Oh, sweetheart, I said, your father would be proud of you for how you've handled this situation. You could have stayed angry and bitter, but instead you're trying to understand and forgive. That takes tremendous strength. I don't feel strong, David admitted. I feel foolish and heartbroken. Feeling heartbroken proves that you have a big, loving heart, I told him. And that heart will heal with time. The love you gave Jessica wasn't wasted, even though she didn't deserve it. That love is practice for when the right person comes along. 3 weeks after Jessica's arrest, we received news that she had pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She would serve 2 years in prison and pay restitution to all her victims. Officer Martinez told us that Jessica had cooperated fully with the investigation, helping them identify other potential victims and recovering some of the stolen money. She seemed genuinely remorseful, Officer Martinez said when he called to update us. Her lawyer says she wants to get counseling and turn her life around. Whether she'll actually follow through, only time will tell. David was quiet when I shared this news with him. Finally he said, I hope she does change, Mom. I hope prison helps her become the person she pretended to be. I was amazed by my son's capacity for forgiveness. Even after everything Jessica had done to him, he still wished her well. That's when I knew that David would be okay. His heart might be broken now, but it was still whole. 2 months later, David started dating again. Not seriously, just casual coffee dates with a few different women. One of them was Sarah, a teacher at the elementary school who came to the library regularly to find books for her students. Sarah was everything Jessica wasn't: honest, genuine, kind. She had grown up in our town and everyone knew her family. She volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends and organized food drives for needy families during the holidays. When David first brought Sarah to meet me, I could see immediately that this was different. Sarah didn't ask questions about our family's finances or the value of our house. Instead, she wanted to hear stories about David as a child. She laughed at his silly jokes and listened intently when he talked about his work at the library. She's wonderful, I told David after Sarah went home that first evening. But take your time, honey. There's no rush. David smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I had seen from him since Jessica's arrest. I know, Mom, but Sarah makes me feel peaceful. Like I can just be myself without worrying about hidden agendas or secret motives. 6 months later, David and Sarah got engaged. But this time, David was careful and thoughtful about his choice. He introduced Sarah to all our friends and neighbors. He met her family and spent time getting to know them. He observed how she treated waiters in restaurants and clerks in stores. Most importantly, he watched how Sarah interacted with me and the rest of our family. Did she seem genuinely interested in our conversations, or was she just being polite? Did she offer to help with dishes and cooking, or did she expect to be waited on? Did she ask thoughtful questions about our lives, or did she steer conversations toward money and possessions? Sarah passed every test with flying colors. She was genuinely kind, genuinely interested in our family, and genuinely in love with David for who he was as a person. Their wedding was beautiful. It took place in our backyard garden, surrounded by William's roses and all the people who truly loved them. Sarah wore her grandmother's wedding dress, simple and elegant. David wore William's old suit, which I had saved all these years. As I watched my son marry this wonderful woman, I thought about how Jessica's betrayal had actually led David to find true love. If he hadn't gone through that terrible experience, he might not have been ready to appreciate someone as genuine as Sarah. 1 year after David and Sarah's wedding, they gave me the most precious gift, my first grandchild. Little William, named after his grandfather, was born with David's gentle brown eyes and Sarah's sweet smile. As I held baby William for the first time, I thought about the lies Jessica had told about carrying William's child. The real William's legacy wasn't some made-up baby from a cruel con artist. His legacy was this beautiful child, born from genuine love and raised by parents who would teach him about honesty, kindness, and integrity. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what Jessica did to our family. They want to know if I hate her for the pain she caused. But honestly, I don't hate Jessica. I feel sorry for her. Jessica was a woman who had lost her way, who made terrible choices that hurt innocent people. But she was also a woman who had been shaped by her own pain and desperation. Her story could have been different if she had asked for help instead of turning to crime. I hope that Jessica is using her time in prison to figure out how to live an honest life. I hope she's getting the counseling she needs to understand why she hurt so many people. And I hope that when she gets out, she'll find a way to make amends for the damage she caused. As for our family, Jessica's betrayal made us stronger. We learned to be more careful about who we trust, but we didn't let her experience make us cynical or closed-hearted. We learned that love requires both trust and wisdom. David learned that real love doesn't require you to ignore red flags or make excuses for bad behavior. Sarah showed him what healthy love looks like. Love that builds you up instead of tearing you down. Love that's based on honesty instead of manipulation. I learned that sometimes the people who seem the most harmless can be the most dangerous. But I also learned that truth always wins in the end, even when lies seem more powerful at first. Most importantly, our family learned that we can survive anything as long as we stick together and support each other. Jessica tried to destroy us with her lies and manipulation, but she only made us appreciate the genuine love we share. These days, our house is filled with laughter again. David and Sarah visit every Sunday with little William. We sit in the garden where his grandfather used to grow roses, telling stories and making new memories. Sometimes I catch David looking at his son with such pure love and joy, and I know that he has completely healed from Jessica's betrayal. He's not afraid to love anymore. He's not suspicious of everyone he meets. He's just a man who has learned the difference between real love and fake love. My advice to anyone who has been betrayed by someone they trusted is this: don't let their lies become your truth. Don't let their betrayal make you afraid to love again. Take time to heal, learn from the experience, but don't let it close your heart forever. Jessica taught us that some people will try to take advantage of our kindness. But that doesn't mean we should stop being kind. It just means we should be wise in how we show our kindness. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. If someone's story doesn't add up, ask questions. If someone seems too interested in your money or possessions, be cautious. But also remember that most people are good. Most people who claim to love you really do love you. Don't let one bad experience poison your ability to recognize genuine love when it comes along. Family is worth fighting for. Truth is worth defending. And love, real, honest, genuine love, is worth waiting for. So that's my story about the night my daughter-in-law tried to destroy my family with her lies, and how the truth set us all free. It was the most difficult experience our family had ever faced, but it led us to appreciate what we have even more. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to deal with someone who tried to manipulate your family? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me what city you're watching from. Thank you so much for listening to my story until the very end. This is Grandma's voice, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember, no matter what challenges life brings, love and truth will always win in the end. Keep your families close, trust your instincts, and never give up hope. Until next time, I am sending all my love to each and every one of you wonderful people who make Grandma's narrative possible. God bless you all, and I'll see you soon with another story from the heart.